this in the message. Once you adopt the wisdom of the knowledge of good and evil and begin to live by it, all your conclusions come from that knowledge. All your conclusions will now be darkened by sin and death.
Yes.
Right? So you'll judge yourself and whether you're good or evil based on what you see in your life. Right? So if you think you see all the good fruit, you'll judge yourself as good.
That's right.
If you think you don't see the good fruit, you'll judge yourself as evil. And you'll also see God judging you by that knowledge. Right?
Yes.
So if you see yourself perishing, you see yourself sickness, you see yourself without money, you see yourself with problems in your kids, problems in your relationships, problems wherever, you think God's judging you as evil. Right? And so it darkens your mind. That's why it says our minds were darkened and alienated from God. Right? We were darkened by the sin and death that entered the world. We began judging ourselves by the sin and death that was in the world. We began judging God and His heart for us by the sin and death that was in the world.
Yeah.
And we began judging God by the sin and death that was in the world. And that's what it would be to live by the knowledge of good and evil. Right? And ultimately, the final part of that is you'll judge God as evil because you'll say He's the one doing this.
Right.
And that's where you find Nimrod when he's come to the full manifestation of the serpent, where the serpent judged God as evil because he set man over angels.
Yeah.
And the serpent said, "You're evil for doing that." Nimrod comes and doesn't see that the flood was God trying to save man. He sees the flood as God killing man. And it says he shakes his hand before God like a mighty hunter in the earth. He basically tells God, to hell with you. We're going to preserve our own lives.
Right.
And then they start building the Tower of Babel. What's one of the reasons why they're building the Tower of Babel? Do you notice how high they were building it?
Yeah.
Do you know why they were building it that high? So the next flood couldn't take them out. So forget the ark, man. Forget God preserving our lives. We're going to preserve our own lives.
Wow.
Right? He began judging God by the sin and death that was in the world. Right? He began attributing it to Him. God's judged us as evil because of our sin and our death. Now, we're going to judge Him as evil. You ever notice how when somebody is like, they decide they don't like you, it becomes real easy for you not to like them?
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
When someone's all the time talking bad about you, it becomes easy to be like, well, screw them. You ever notice how easy that happens?
Yeah.
Well, listen, if you're busy thinking God's looking at you in sin and death, pointing out your nakedness, and God's all the time speaking evil of you, it becomes very easy to eventually say, well, screw him. At first, you'll try to get a good report by your works. And you'll try real hard. Because you want God to speak well of you.
Right.
And the more you try, and the more you think you fail, and you're judging yourself as a failure, but then you hear Him speaking evil of you.
Yeah.
Eventually what you end up saying is, well, screw him. If he don't like me, I don't like him. If he don't want me, I don't want him. And that is the carnal mind running its course inside of a person. Right?
And we live in a world full of death and destruction that provides plenty of evidence to feed that thought process.
Right.
Yes, though, Greg, it's a barrier. It's a barrier of protection.